Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the September 27th, 2022 meeting of the University City Council to order at 6:30. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Clay,
I knew I was going to be first. Present.
Councilmember Klein.
Here.
Councilmember McMahon,
Here.
Councilmember Hales.
Here.
Councilmember Smotherson,
Here.
Councilmember Cusick is excused. Mayor Crowe.
Here. Thank you very much. Before you have the agenda. I would like to ask that we have one amendment to the agenda, and it's actually just on a related item. And that is that I would ask if my colleagues are interested that we, in connection with bill number 9486, authorize that the John Fair report be made open to the public and available for distribution as of tomorrow. Is there a motion to amend the agenda to include that report? There's a motion made by Mr. Hales. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? This is the report that is, all of my colleagues know has been used. John Ferry is a person who works with us on economic development numbers and projections. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none on the motion to amend, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. You now have before you the amended agenda. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. McMahon, seconded by Ms. Klein. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. You have before you two proclamations that the members of council will sign at the conclusion of the evening. I do hope that those of you who are in attendance, particularly if anyone knows Mr. Bressler, who is turning 100 on October the 22nd and is a World War II vet in the United States Navy and had a successful career at Sigma Aldrich and lives here in University City. There's a declaration wishing him a happy 100th birthday. So we will get that out to his family. You have before you the minutes of September 12th, 2022, the study session for fire department dispatch services. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Hale, seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. You have before you the September the 12th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Clay, seconded by Ms. Klein. Is there discussion? Yes, got it. Mr. Smotherson will abstain. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. There are no appointments to boards or commissions, no swearing ins. We will move now to the citizen participation. First off, it is great to have everybody back in the chambers with us this evening. Thank you for coming out. For those of you who may not have been here before, if you would like to speak on agenda items or on non-agenda items, there's a sign-in sheet right by the entryway to the door. You fill it out and then put it in the basket that is close to the city clerk here on the railing. For those of you who have already signed up to speak, when you come to the podium, if you will please give your name and address, and each of you have 5 minutes to speak. We have a few folks speaking on non-agenda items and several folks who will be speaking on agenda items as they are called later in the meeting. The first person to speak is Judy Myers. And the microphone button is at the bottom. If you'll hit the button and the green light will come on, I hope. There you go.
Yes, my name is Judy Myers and I live at 1169 Birch Lane. And I have several comments on the FEMA buyout that we found out about in the press. So my first question, is what was the criteria for selecting the homes that were going to be bought out? The reason I bring this up is on Birch Lane. If you don't know, it's a street of 19 homes. And when I looked at the list of homes, I think 12 were selected. And if the buyout were to go through, then it would be, it's not like they chose all the homes that were primarily affected by the flood. It seems very indiscriminate, and there would leave holes on the block as far as the homes that were decided to buy out. So again, I don't understand what criteria was used to make that selection. I don't know if you have that answer right now. But it's there needs to be some thought process into it, and there doesn't appear to have been one. So
Ms. Myers, normally during this period of time, the council doesn't answer questions, but
Okay.
we do have Dr. John Wagner will get back to you. He's the head of community planning and zoning and is in the back. And we will make sure that he through the city or the city manager will be getting back to you and answer your questions.
and I did leave him a message, but it was only today, so he wouldn't have had the opportunity. And the only other thing I want to bring to attention that has not been discussed, at least in my hearing, is it all gets back to most of the people on my block experience sewer backup from MSD. And I know you've heard about that before, and they have never been held accountable for cleaning out the waterways, cleaning out the sewerways. There is no reason that the amount of water should have backed up into our basements, causing the amount of damage that it did. So I just want to ask you, I never hear anything about MSD and their accountability, because it is their accountability. Sure, the floodwaters that came up over, we know that it was historical, biblical rain is what I called it, and that couldn't have been helped. But the sewer backup is a completely different issue that needs to be addressed with MSD. Thank you.
We agree. Thank you. Next person to speak is Don Fitz.
It's okay to take this off. Okay. I'm gonna put this here. My name is Don Fitz. I live at 6954 Dartmouth. I was a victim of the flood. After we had started moving, changing our house from our Harvard address to our Dartmouth address, we lost, I'd estimate about $100,000 from a damage to the Dartmouth house. I had my belongings for over 50 years there, including books that some of them were the first edition of books. Some of them I had my notes from classes I taught. I had various other items, in the basement that were all destroyed, and those were priceless. I mean, you don't get anything for used books, especially if they're over 50 years old. So I had a big loss. I started looking around for what sources of money were found. The only thing I could find was FEMA. I couldn't get flood insurance because I was actually I didn't get flood insurance. I was actually more concerned about an earthquake in the St. Louis area than a flood. And we're worried about whether if their flood did come, would it be 2 inches or 4 inches? I wasn't really worried about 7.5 feet, which destroyed everything in our basement. So I looked around to see what different agencies were doing. One of the ones I was looked at was the county assessor. And the county assessor I found is doing virtually nothing. The current Democratic Party county assessor is doing virtually nothing. The Republican says the current assessor is basically saying, I would give a small amount of money to a very small number of people, but not any radical adjustment. The Republican said he wouldn't do anything for anyone. And then I realized, well, there is another candidate, because I'm going to be on the ballot as the Green Party candidate for the county assessor for this November. And so I started thinking and talking to people, and I came up with an article that was printed in the Post-Dispatch of August the 28th. And I devised the negative assessment adjustment that would be a major financial support for people who live in the who were damaged by this flood and future floods. And I realized that a lot of people think, well, a flood doesn't have anything to do with the county assessor's race. I think that the flood has everything to do with the county assessor's race, because the county assessor has the ability to do this, to think up new ideas, to be creative, like the current people in that office are absolutely not doing. And the other thing the county assessor can do is to work with all sorts of other agencies, because it's an assessment problem. If we let more and more houses be destroyed by floods, there's going to be less and less ability to raise funds for the county. So I think it's very strongly connected, and we really need to be taught when we're talking about the county assessor's office, we need to be talking about climate change. And I think it's unfortunate that of all the issues that are talked about with this flood, it's referred to, as a 1 in 100-year flood or 1 in 1,000-year flood. That's not true at all. Climate change is getting worse and not better. And so I think it's very important to link these issues. And listen, I'm going to give some more copies of this so everybody on the city council can have a copy. And this carries, that has what I proposed for the in the Post-Dispatch op-ed piece that I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fitz. That concludes our citizen participation on non-agenda items. We will now move forward with public hearings. And as if you've got an agenda in front of you, you'll see that we have 9 public hearings. I've been on this body a long time, and 9 public hearings is a lot. To the 4 folks who have signed up to speak on bills number 9485 and 9486, all 4 of you signed up to speak during the legislative part when the a bill is being called up for a vote. So during the public hearing, you will not speak because you did not ask to speak during the public hearing. You'll speak when the bill is called prior to the vote. Just making sure that you guys see when we fly through this, you don't necessarily think that you have been skipped over in any way. So we'll now move forward with the public hearing. Public hearing on the 2022 annual property tax rates. It is opened at 6:42. All public comments that were previously provided to the city clerk have been provided to members of council. No one has signed up to speak. Thus, the hearing is now closed at 6:42. Next public hearing is on easement vacation of Briscoe Place, bill number 9476. The public hearing is open at 6:42. All written comments have been provided to members of council. No one has chosen to speak this evening on this docket item. Thus, the public hearing is closed at 6:43. The next is easement vacation of Barbie Lane south of Delmar, bill 9477. All comments provided to the city clerk have been provided to members of this body, and no one has signed up to speak. Thus, the hearing was opened at 6:43 and closed at 6:43. Opening the hearing for the easement vacation of McKnight Place south of Delmar, bill number 9478, opened at 6:43. All comments have been provided by the city clerk to members of the body, and no one has requested to speak. Thus, the public hearing is closed at 6:43. Next one, easement vacation, Elmore Court, bill number 9479, opened at 6:44. All comments that have been provided to the city clerk have been forwarded on to members of the body. No one has requested to speak. Thus, this hearing is closed at 6:44. Easement vacation for Orchard Court, bill number 9480, is opened at 6:44. All comments provided to the city clerk have been provided to members of this body. No one has requested to speak this evening. Thus, the hearing is closed at 6:44. Easement vacation for Richard Court, bill number 9481. It is opened at 6:44. All comments that have been provided to the city clerk have been forwarded on to members of the body. No one has requested to speak tonight. Thus, the hearing is closed at 6:44. Proposed development plan for the Delmar Boulevard redevelopment area, bill number 9486. Hearing is opened at 6:44. All comments provided to the city clerk have been forwarded to members of the body. No one has requested to speak this evening. Thus, the hearing is closed at 6:45. Finally, liquor license, Nobu Restaurant, 6523 Delmar Boulevard, opened at 6:45. All comments related to this item that have been provided to the city clerk have been forwarded to members of the body. No one has requested to speak this evening. Thus, the public hearing is closed at 6:45 p.m. You now have before you the consent agenda with 3 items on it. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Hales. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this first agenda item asks that you receive a presentation on an update on the renovation projects. And we have with us tonight Amanda Trumper with Triggers, who will be providing this presentation. Amanda?
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Oh, excuse me, Mayor, council members. So tonight we wanted to come back in front of you to give an update on the progress of the projects, primarily a financial update. We did complete construction documents. We've also submitted for permit at this time. So the, excuse me, the drawings are largely complete, aside from them going out to bid. So what we're updating right now is what our internal cost estimating team has updated for kind of the completion of the scope. So I can point out that there really haven't been any real significant changes in the design. It's just been kind of design development, the detailing and those things, final material selections, all that. We did get an elevator variance approved to the state of Missouri. The existing annex elevator is just a skosh too small to allow for perfect wheelchair accessibility. It's like off by like half an inch. And that's just one of those things that you have to kind of get through a hurdle to make sure that we don't get hung up when it comes to actual occupancy. So that's already been completed. The drawings were done. We did make the updates to the site fencing and constraints, as we talked about in a couple of previous meetings. And then some other things. May I move a little bit closer? Okay, thank you. We've got things that are still not included in some of these costs. So the removal of the police structures, we understand that that happens by others. There's also we have asked for the seismic retrofit as well to be an alternate items that the city can choose to do that or not. And then we, like I said, we updated the site plan based on all of the feedback. So basically this summary is kind of a, a comparison of each of the estimates that we received to date. And the cost has gone up at each phase. And I can say pretty definitively that it's not scope creep. That really we have watched escalation just really batter the cost of the project. So compared to design development, the total project cost went up by $1.9 million. We saw the site work, though, it did go down a little bit, and that's because of that reduced fencing, and we're not doing the anti-climb fence. So we did see that delta as we would have expected. But the annex itself went up by 1.7 million and the Trinity up by just 340,000. Again, there are some very significant volatility in the market when it comes to steel. The detention truss wall system that has been specified, that manufacturer's estimate came in much, much higher than previous estimates. I don't know if it's because the scope was more defined. They're also made out of steel. So our suspicion is that they're pricing this in a super volatile market with, an install or purchase date that's out in the future, and they're giving us a really, really high budget number. Now, the bid set will allow for us to competitively bid this product. It's not just one manufacturer. So one of the things that happens with cost estimating is not we're not competitively costing these line items, but that one was significant. So anything that we thought we might have even been able to shave in previous phases kind of came right back to us in that line item. And then we did add in a tuck pointing allowance for both buildings. That's an allowance that will be kind of spent against as a line item, but it's kind of to be determined as the work kind of progresses. So we did have a hold in there to make sure that the city's covered for those sorts of work. But other things that went up with mechanical controls and detailing, just some more detail there as I took that back to their mechanical estimating, that ticked up just a little bit. Electrical power and data pretty much maintained the same. I think the generator a little bit larger, so it increased in cost, not by a ton. We did have a request for a dry pipe sprinkler system in some of the infrastructure areas. So for the server closets, things like that. And that does have its own kind of added cost to it. If it's, if it's required by insurance or other purposes, then that's kind of a required cost, but that was something that was added during construction documents. And then, like I said, the site work was revised. So from previous, this is our DD estimate. Our DD estimate went up from SD by about 9%. Our estimate from DD to CDs went up about 8.5%. So it's trending with the way inflation is trending, unfortunately. Looking at things line by line, it was pretty much across the board. Like we look at these cost estimates and we try to find where things kind of swung, and they didn't really. So that trust wall number was a big one. And beyond that, each of these kind of line items we saw, go up and down a bit. Even the seismic retrofit went down a little bit because that was further defined. But all of the things that we kind of really couldn't control did pop up. One of the things that we do in the construction documents phase also, because the drawings are complete, is we remove owner contingencies from the cost. So now we're not looking at design change contingencies, which can run 10, 15, 20%. Those usually come down as you develop. We've moved those now completely out of the cost line item, but there is a recommendation that the city carry some contingencies for working in historic structures, complexity factors such as these sorts of buildings. So we kind of moved that outside the line. So the $23 million cost is kind of our estimate for construction. And then there's additional contingencies that would be recommended to the tune of, 10% for construction, maybe 2% for complexity. All of this is based on drawings that were completed at the beginning of August, and these numbers were current as of the beginning of September. There's some other things like furniture, fixtures, and things like that are not included in this estimate at this time. Things like the shooting range, some of the Bradford storage solutions, we understand that that's a direct vendor contract with the state of Missouri. So that really shouldn't be lumped into the construction cost because you don't want to pay GC profit overhead on those things that the city can purchase direct. And as well, the X-ray machines and metal detectors are also pulled out as not included in the cost of construction, again, because of these kind of direct purchase relationships that you could cut out some of these ads for. So as far as schedule goes, we did submit for permit, like I said, right at the end of last month. We're here speaking to you guys today. We've got the site development plan on the agenda for hopeful approval for this evening. And right now we're looking at the city's timeline for soliciting bidders. Trivers has recommended a pre-qualification process because of the complexity factor of these buildings. And it'll, we feel that it will garner better interest, and you'll know that you're getting a contractor that can do the work. And it generally, when you do a pre-qualification process, you get tighter and more competitive bids. If you don't kind of keep that a little bit more focused, there can be a tendency for people either to choose not to bid if they think somebody's just going to be super low and just not able to be competitive against that. So this can kind of help narrow the field and get you really realistic pricing. So procurement is kind of happening, as I understand it, kind of right now on the city side. And, we're just kind of waiting to start construction. So that's it for me.
Are there questions of our speaker this evening from members of council or of the city manager? Mr. Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. We know costs are, thank you for the presentation as well. We know costs are escalating. Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel as it relates to these costs? I realize I'm asking you something very speculative, but is this something that's going to bedevil us throughout the process, or at least during the procurement phase?
There are indicators that things could be slowing down, which could help the bidding climate get more competitive, depending on how this times. So I know volatility is also starting to reduce a little bit as well, as we're starting to get a handle on just regular inflation. That will start to tamper some of this down as well. That's what you would expect. Now, I feel like the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen everything that I've not expected. So yeah, I can go on public record as saying I don't know.
Anyone else? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I would just state that the next step in the process is to move forward with bidding this project. And at that point, we'll have a more firm idea of what the actual cost would be if you decide to move forward with it.
Thank you. Are you ready to move on to item number 2?
Mayor and council members, this next item, item K2, asks that you consider an application for a site plan review and approval for the University City Annex and Trinity Building renovation. I would ask Dr. Wagner to present this item. Dr. Wagner?
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Good evening, everybody. That's going to be a kind of a tough act to follow. But the site plan approval for the annex and the Trinity building is what's before you now. There's the site plan itself, the landscape plan, as well as the architectural renderings. I know we've been involved in this for quite some time, so I'm not going to rehash the entire thing. A couple of things of note were a couple meetings with Historic Preservation Commission. We met once on back on March 17th and met with the Green Practices Commission to review the entirety of the project. And we met again on July 28th for a more thorough analysis. Really, and the main purpose of that meeting was to determine the plan's adherence to the 1985 Civic Plaza Historic District Master Plan. And after a relatively, it wasn't too long a discussion, about an hour and a half, determined that the plan did unanimously determined 4-0 that the plan did indeed meet the comply with the Civic Plaza Historic District Master Plan. Another item to note is the design of the fence is yet to be determined. So that's fence approval is not part of the site plan approval as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure Amanda would probably be happy to answer any questions as well.
Any questions of Dr. Wagner? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the site plan as presented? Motion made by Mr. McMahon. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Klein. Mr. Smotherson?
No.
Oh, you're green.
No.
I was jumping the gun. Sorry, Blaine. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Nay.
The ayes have it.
Mayor and council members, this next item, item K3, asks that you consider an application for a conditional use permit at 7001 Olive Boulevard. The proposed use is to allow a food truck to operate temporarily at 7001 Olive Boulevard in the general commercial district. Dr. Wagner is here to present this item. Dr. Wagner?
Thank you. This one is a little bit different sort of conditional use permit. It's Miss Latoya Thompson, who is here this evening to answer any questions, purchased the site to operate a restaurant. And she determined relatively quickly that the site, I mean, and most of you had, well, the building is no longer there anymore. It's been demolished, but it was a pretty small building and it's kind of a triangular site. So it's a pretty tough building to build on. So she decided to demolish the building and have a new one built. And in the meantime, she wanted to put her food truck just on the site, not to drive around, but just on the site in order to get maybe a jump start on the business before the actual restaurant was done. So in speaking with Mr. Mulligan, we determined that a conditional use permit would be a good way to approach this and have the conditions attached to that. So that's what we did. We talked about this at the last planning commission meeting, and the conditions that we came up with are on page 4 of the city council report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, as would Ms. Thompson, I'm sure.
Mr. Smotherson.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Dr. Wagner, I should say. Just a simple question for either you or Ms. Thompson, and that is how, I just want to understand how the truck is going to be configured on that lot. Right now, there's hay. Is that going to be paved before the truck is placed on the lot? And how does that work, if you could explain?
Good evening. And as you speak, if you'd give your name and address, that would be great. Thank you.
The Latoya Thompson, the address to the site or my residential address?
An address.
Okay, 6538 Crest Avenue.
Thanks.
So right now they just demoed it, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And I haven't talked to the engineers to see if it's going to be required to have it pay first before the food truck, or is it operatable for the food truck to go there now?
Okay, but you can give us an update on that, or give us a call, or just let us know.
Oh, yeah.
And the last thing that I will say is thank you for your interest. Thank you for purchasing that lot, and thank you for, I'm looking forward to alternative meat.
Yes, yes. Plant-based, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Smotherson, seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We'll now move forward into unfinished business. And we have 11 items to go through. And to all of you, we ask your forbearance as the city clerk does an awful lot of reading. And if we make a skip on one of these, please someone correct me as we go through. You have before you bill number 9476. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9476, an ordinance vacating and surrendering the right-of-way of Briscoe Place.
May we have the third reading?
Bill 9476, an ordinance vacating and surrendering the right-of-way of Briscoe Place.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. McMahon, seconded by Mr. Smotherson. Is there discussion? Mr. Smotherson?
No, sir. I'm sorry. Again.
There's no discussion. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on bill number 9476?
Councilmember Klein.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Councilmember Hales.
Aye.
Councilmember Clay.
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. The bill is passed. May we have the second reading of bill number 9477?
Bill 9477, an ordinance vacating and surrendering a portion of Barbie Lane right-of-way.
May we have the third reading?
Bill 9477, an ordinance vacating and surrendering a portion of Barbie Lane right-of-way.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Ms. Klein, seconded by Mr. Smotherson. Is there discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Councilmember Hales.
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Aye.
Councilmember Clay.
Aye.
Councilmember Klein.
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. The bill has passed. Bill number 9478. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9478, an ordinance vacating and surrendering a portion of McKnight Place right-of-way.
May we have the third reading?
Bill 9478, an ordinance vacating and surrendering a portion of McKnight Place right-of-way.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. McMahon, seconded by Mr. Hales. Is there discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hales.
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Aye.
Councilmember Clay.
Aye.
Councilmember Klein.
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. The bill has passed. Bill number 9479. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9479, an ordinance vacating and surrendering the right of way of Elmore Court.
May we have the third reading?
Bill 9479, an ordinance vacating and surrendering the right of way of Elmore Court.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Smotherson. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? Mr. Smotherson.
Yes, sir. And I know it's hard for you to see me. Just a very quick question for the city manager, and that is that we're approving this or not, but are we sure that there are no residents living on that street? And I'm picking this, choosing this specifically because of what I see happening there every day. And I'm just making sure that I just want to know the update about, is there a resident still living on the street?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, I'd asked Darren Dunkel or John Wagner to respond to that question. As I understand it, for each of the vacations that we do, we go through a process of ensuring that there is no public purpose for that right of way any longer. But I want them to respond directly to your question. Dr. Wagner?
Councilmember Smotherson, no, I don't believe there are any residents on those streets. And I'll consult with the folks at UCity LLC to make sure that if there is anybody left and they should soon be on their way out, that they don't, tear the street up before all that's taken care of. So.
Yes, sir. And again, I'm just asking because I'm there every day, and I do notice that there is one particular house that has one particular resident that still has his car in that driveway. If you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll check with them tomorrow to make sure that
Okay.
they're taken care of as well.
Thank you, sir.
So on bill number 9479, I believe we've had the second and third reading, and it has been introduced and seconded. Am I correct, Madam Clerk?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Smotherson,
Aye.
Councilmember Clay,
Aye.
Councilmember Klein,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Councilmember Hills.
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. The bill is passed. Bill number 9480. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9480, an ordinance vacating and surrendering the right of way of Orchard Court.
May we have the third reading?
Bill 9480, an ordinance vacating and surrendering the right of way of Orchard Court.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Smotherson, seconded by Ms. Klein. Is there discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Smotherson, Councilmember Clay, Councilmember Klein,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hills.
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. The bill is passed. Bill number 9481. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9481, an ordinance vacating and surrendering the right of way of Richard Court.
The third reading?
Bill 9481, an ordinance vacating and surrendering the right of way of Richard Court.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. McMahon. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Clay,
Aye.
Councilmember Klein,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Councilmember Hills.
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. The bill is passed. Bill number 9482. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9482, an ordinance approving a final plat for a major subdivision of a tract of land to be known as Market at Olive Plat 4.
May we have the third reading?
Bill 9482, an ordinance approving a final plat for a major subdivision of a tract of land to be known as Market at Olive Plat 4.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Smotherson, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Klein,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hills.
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson,
Aye.
Councilmember Clay, Mayor Crowe.
Aye, the bill has passed. Bill number 9483. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9483, An ordinance approving a final plat for a minor subdivision of a tract of land to be known as Adjusted Lot 7 in Marketed Olive Plat 3R.
May we have the third reading?
Bill 9483, an ordinance approving a final plat for a minor subdivision of a tract of land to be known as Adjusted Lot 7 in Marketed Olive Plat 3R.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Ms. Klein, seconded by Mr. Hales. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Councilmember Hills.
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Aye.
Councilmember Clay. Councilmember Klein.
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye, the bill has passed. Bill number 9484. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9484, an ordinance approving a right-of-way dedication plat for a portion of Trinity Avenue north of Delmar Boulevard, adjacent to the City Hall Civic Complex.
May we have the third reading?
Bill 9484, an ordinance approving a right-of-way dedication plat for a portion of Trinity Avenue north of Delmar Boulevard, adjacent to the City Hall Civic Complex.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Hale, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hills.
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Aye.
Councilmember Clay. Councilmember Klein.
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye, the bill is passed. Bill number 9485. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9485, an ordinance authorizing the city of University City, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial revenue bonds, Delmar Boulevard Redevelopment Area Project, Series 2022, in a principal amount not to exceed $90 million for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of acquiring, constructing, and improving a facility for an industrial development project in the city, approving a plan for the project, and authorizing the city to enter into certain agreements and take certain other actions in connection therewith.
May we have the third reading?
Bill 9485, an ordinance authorizing the city of University City, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial revenue bonds, Delmar Boulevard Redevelopment Area Project, Series 2022, in a principal amount not to exceed $90 million for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of acquiring, constructing, and improving a facility for an industrial development project in the city, approving a plan for the project, and authorizing the city to enter into certain agreements and take certain other actions in conjunction therewith.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. McMahon. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Hales. Prior to discussion by members of council, we have several residents who have asked to speak on this bill. So we will now move forward with the first request to speak. And Ms. Collins. And when you come to the microphone again, if you'll push the button at the bottom and then give your name and address and a 5-minute limitation on speech.
Hi, my name is Grace Collins and I live at 8841 Washington Avenue. That's 63124. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm going to do the best I can in expressing my thoughts, concerns. I am blessed that I was not a victim of these recent floods. There was a neighbor I know, he got 7 feet of water and he had insurance because he moved to our neighborhood from another place where he lived in Clayton, where he had 8 feet of water near Oak Knoll Park. I have just a little bit about me. I do have a reading disability. So I want to just state that for the fact that I found what is going on, what I comprehend with these two bills at stake. They have been confusing to me. I don't understand the changes from Avenir to Delmar redevelopment. I don't see how any of us could have expected the flood victims to have this disaster. Anybody in their brilliant of all brilliant minds. But I feel strongly that they take precedent versus a luxury apartment building that's going on. That has now truly been blighted. Yet I had some friends living there up until December 2021 paying rent. Can't go back, but this is a luxury apartment building that I think eventually, perhaps will bring money, revenue. But first, my concern is the flood victims. It's the fire department. It's the police department. It's this building here that is going through a renovation that I think needs to take a priority, not a luxury apartment building. There are still homes that will not, from my understanding, the flood victims, that will not be able to recoup anything. Some, I understand, they will, but there are some that won't. So and we have trash trucks that aren't functioning, but I thank you all for letting me speak tonight. It was a little confusing having received word that plans had changed, life changes, but my understanding when I saw the packet, it said public hearing, yet we were unable to speak. And I received word yesterday that those had changed, that we were able to speak. So here I am. So Grace Collins again, I live at 8841 Washington Avenue, 63124. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Our next request to speak, I think Robert Preston. If you could push the button on the bottom. Thank you very much. And give your name and address.
You bet. My name is Rob Preston. I'm counsel for the developer, the Zach and Charlie Deutsch. My office address is 1 Brentwood Boulevard. Wanted to, since the developers, the petitioners here aren't, they're celebrating the holiday for another 11 minutes. They asked me to come and thank all the members of the public that reached out to support this project, and run through briefly some of the reasons why we think those individuals reached out to voice support for the project, and why I think that you as a city council should accept the city staff's recommendation to approve these 2 bills. And I'm going to kind of conflate the 2 together, speak about the project of the whole, but if there's specific questions with respect to the 2 bills, we can certainly address those separately. First of all, this is just a good project. It was very carefully planned in accordance with good zoning practice. It's consistent with the city's master plan, which specifically designates this parcel for redevelopment. And it's going to create an ideal buffer between the single family residences in University City behind and the highway corridor to the east. This project also has gone through numerous iterations with city staff and with the concerned neighbors. They've eliminated the 5th floor to be responsive to some comments, rerouted access points, increased landscape buffers, et cetera. I think it's also worth supporting this project because it's a very good long-term investment for this community, even with the abatements and other incentives that are sought here. This is almost $90 million, $87.5 million in new investment in the community. About 2.5 million of that is going to go straight into public infrastructure, roads, utilities, sidewalks, et cetera. The package, the incentives that are sought here is a 5 years of tax abatement to make this project financially feasible. 5 years in this case wasn't just a number that was pulled out of the blue, but was a result of, in part, the amount of the public infrastructure that's being covered by the developer as part of this project, but also a result of an in-depth financial review of the developer's project finances that was performed by Mr. Ferry, a third-party consultant hired by the city to review the project. And I understand that that's going to be available for review. That report and, you know, the approval of the incentives that are sought was done about a year ago. And as we heard earlier, prices have skyrocketed since that time, making the need for the incentives that we're talking about today even more pertinent. This project with the 5-year abatement that's being sought is fairly modest. Anecdotally, as an attorney that represents developers with other projects across the region for similarly sized investments and multifamily developments. I want to make very clear that the project and the abatement that is sought only applies to net new taxes, certain net new taxes. All existing taxes that are paid to all taxing districts, that would be the school district, the city, special school district, everyone else will continue to receive taxes at the current levels through the development period and the abatement period. And at the end of the abatement period, the whole project would go back on the tax rolls. The current tax liability for the project is about $112,000 per annum. When it comes back online with this investment, we anticipate, based on comparable sales and whatnot with the assessor's office, that it would be about $530,000. So that's a huge increase in the tax base of the city, and it would quickly, that big delta would quickly pay off the value of the abatement. Also, pursuant to state law, there would be no abatement with respect to taxes paid to emergency responders. So that would be 911 and the fire department. And after the abate, and to ensure that we're careful stewards of the tax breaks that are sought, we've at the request of the Plan Commission inserted into our plan a clawback right, such that if at any time during the abatement period the developer sells the project, a portion of the abatement that they received would have to be paid back to the city and the impacted taxing districts.
Mr. Preston, your time has expired. Can you wrap it up?
Of course. Just want to thank you, and I'll be available for questions on this or the other bill if they arise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next request to speak is Mr. Tom Sullivan.
Tom Sullivan, 751 Syracuse. I do not believe the Avenir development should receive a $3.5 million subsidy. It seems an abuse of the Chapter 100 provision in state law. What is supposed to be an incentive for projects that might not otherwise get done seems more like a giveaway to a very connected developer, Charles Deutsch, so he can build the luxury apartments at less cost to himself. Mr. Deutsch has long had best buddy status in City Hall. He was also one of the biggest campaign contributors to U-City ballot proposals and politicians. It is ironic that he made a $2,000 contribution earlier this year to the campaign for Proposition F, the proposed sales tax increase that would have raised the cost of almost every purchase in University City, including groceries. But now Mr. Deutsch wants a big tax break for himself, including an exemption from sales taxes, and his City Hall friends are willing to go along. What's best for the residents of University City is not even considered. University City is already #1 in the state when it comes to income inequality and #9 in the country. A big luxury apartment complex where some rents will be nearly $50,000 a year will make it even worse. A large segment of the population will not be able to live in the apartments. In addition to his contribution to the Proposition F campaign this year, Mr. Deutsch also made a $500 contribution to Terry Crow's campaign last year. I wonder how many campaign contributions he has made to various U-City politicians and ballot proposals. An ethical politician would not even take contributions from a developer who will always be asking the city for approval for various projects. Mayor Crow should recuse himself from the vote. Also, Mr. Deutsch was a big proponent of the University City School District selling the McNair building to Torah Prep. And when the Costco development came along and a place was needed for Torah Prep to go, Mr. Crow became a big supporter of selling McNair. Just one more example of how city politicians represent the interests of developers rather than what's best for the city. The attorney for Torah Prep was Jerry Greiman, another Terry Crow buddy, who was also a contributor to Mr. Crow's campaign. As I recall, Mr. Crow was also a contributor to the campaign of Greiman's wife. And then Jerry Greiman became head of the TIF Commission, which considered part of the big $70 million subsidy for the Costco development. He said he was no longer the attorney for Torah. This would still be considered a conflict of interest in most of the world, but at University City, it's business as usual. Of course, Jerry Greiman was all for the Costco TIF subsidy. That's what friends are for. It used to be that honest government was something taken for granted in University City. As we have seen with the deception with the Costco project, which may have set a record for lying by city officials, and the dishonesty regarding Proposition F, those days are long gone. It seems the Steve Stinger model is more being followed these days, favors for friends and campaign contributors. There is no need for the Evanar project to be subsidized as it is in a desirable neighborhood. You can be sure a big subsidy won't mean lower rents for tenants. The millions of dollars of subsidies will likely go into the developers' pockets. The proposed subsidy for the Evanar project should be rejected. Thank you for considering my comments.
Our next request to speak is Mr. William Ash.
Hi, I'm William Ash. I live at 8690 West Kingsbury Avenue, U City 63124. Thank you for having this meeting in person and for granting us citizens the opportunity to speak on the record. Regarding the proposed Avenir apartment complex, we residents in the adjoining neighborhood had lots of input, yes, on the overriding of zoning regulation intent, Avenir resident access into our neighborhood, and concerns with traffic congestion. But these bills, 9485 on issuing 90 million in industrial bonds, 9486 granting 5 years of tax abatement, are new and of concern to all Ucidians. They arrived on the city council agenda September 12th, fully detailed. Obviously, the work of many attorneys over many weeks, if not months, ready for signatures with just 3 days public notice, with no council discussion or reference to citizen comments forthcoming. And why are these bills only now being considered after the developers already rendered the buildings unlivable and ready for demolition? We citizens deserve an explanation of who was involved in crafting these bills, how these bills came to be on the agenda, and why these bills should pass. And we need to know that all of you, city officials and council members, are transparently sharing the process. We also need confirmed assurance that you're making financial decisions based on our community's priorities. The city has calculated that the proposed 5-year tax abatement for Avenir totals $2,185,000. This is money the developer retains and hence the city is being deprived of. That amount could cover the cost of buying out the 24 flooded homes and the Hafner Court apartments targeted by the city, or go towards a firefighter's pension fund. And should we still be moving forward of spending $2.2 million to remodel the old library in order to move the city council chamber from here to there? Renovating the annex building for the police department, weren't all of our trash trucks damaged by the flooding? We have only the developer's assurance that the tax abatement is necessary. Regarding Bill 9486, shouldn't the developer reveal the total operational projections over time so we can have them independently assessed and reports shown to us as part of the discussion? I think Mr. Parker just referred to that the first time publicly that I've ever heard of it. The developer's construction budget includes inflated land costs at over $12.5 million. When the appraised value per his own submittal to the Plan Commission was less than 2.84 million. So he uses a higher figure to support his need for abatement and uses the lower figure for his tax basis for the next 8 years. Anyway, if necessary, the developer can tweak his rent structure to cover 2.3% of project costs the abatement represents. For this, I refer you to submitted comments by architect Valmik Thackeray. Another U-City development on Delmar, just east of I-170, is proceeding without an abatement at all. Tax abatement for Avenir during the construction phase through December 2023 seems reasonable to me. But have promises been made to this developer? Maybe reduce taxes for the first year while tenants are onboarded could be a good compromise in this case. But moving forward, there should be full financial reporting required, independent review and public discussion for all developers wanting tax abatement. In closing, I thank you all for your service. You all have essential and difficult roles to play. But I'd like to suggest that we create a task force to examine best practices for city governments, and empowered to publicly recommend changes necessary for greater transparency and accountability to the citizens of University City. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. That concludes the public comments on bill number 9485. Are there questions or comments to be made by members of council on bill number 9485? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on bill number 9485?
Councilmember Smotherson,
Aye.
Councilmember Clay,
Aye.
Councilmember Klein,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hales,
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. The bill is passed. We now have bill number 9486. May we have the second reading?
Bill 9486, an ordinance designating a certain tract of land in the city of University City as a blighted area, approving the development plan for the Delmar Boulevard redevelopment area, approving a development and performance agreement in conjunction with the development plan, and authorizing the city to enter into certain agreements and take certain other actions in conjunction therewith.
May I have the third reading?
Bill 9486, an ordinance designating a certain tract of land in the city of University City as a blighted area, approving the development plan for the Delmar Boulevard redevelopment area, approving a development and performance agreement in connection with the development plan, and authorizing the city to enter into certain agreements and take certain other actions in connection therewith.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. McMahon. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Hales. Each of the four who spoke actually had signed up for both bills. So I will ask Ms. Collins, would you like to speak on this bill, or did the first comment? You had signed up for bill 9485 and 9486. Would you like to speak on this bill? Thank you. Mr. Preston, you signed up for both bills. Would you like to make further remarks? Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Ash? Thank you all very much for your comments this evening. Are there additional comments made by members of council? Mr. Hales?
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. I've prepared some remarks for tonight, and at the conclusion, I would ask the city clerk if I could email an electronic copy to you for the record. The Avenir project began, as all projects do, going before our citizen-led plan commission, which I've had the privilege of serving as council liaison for about the past 3 years or so. For those who don't know, the plan commission is truly one of the most demanding commissions on which citizens volunteer to serve, often with agenda packets exceeding 100 pages. It's one of the only commissions that anything less than a 3-hour meeting is viewed as a bonus. They are an incredibly dedicated group of citizens that volunteer countless hours giving back and serving our community. It's also worth noting that all of the unfinished business items, all 11 of them, went through our plan commission. Sadly, with this project, some have questioned transparency of this process. I'd like to address that tonight. I've done a lot of research on this. I've looked at previous developments under prior administrations, and honestly, I cannot find an instance where the process has been remotely as transparent as this one has. Certainly not one that has gone as long. The proposed project first appeared on a Plan Commission meeting agenda August 26, 2020, more than 2 years ago, where the request for approval of a preliminary development plan and an initial request from the developer of 20 years of tax abatement, the first 10 years at 100% and the next 10 years at 50%. The minutes reflect that approval. I'd like to then run through the dates on which the Avenir project was an agenda item for both the council and Plan Commission. Each of these meetings were either in person or virtual, and notice to the public and comment was received. August 26, 2020 was the Plan Commission. September 29th, 2020 was City Council. October 12th, 2020 was City Council. October 26th, 2020 was City Council. November 9th, 2020 was City Council. June 14th, 2021 was City Council. December 15th, 2021 was the Plan Commission. January 26th, 2022, Plan Commission. February 23rd, 2022, Plan Commission. March 13th, 2022, City Council. March 28th, 2022, City Council. March 31st, 2022, Plan Commission. April 11th, City Council. April 25th, City Council. July 25th, City Council. July 27th, Plan Commission. September 12th, City Council, and of course, today. In addition to the 18 public meetings, the Kingdale neighborhood also organized 3 Zoom meetings with residents as well as Councilmember McMahon and myself in the fall of 2020. Each of those meetings lasted more than 2 hours. And the last one included the city manager, city attorney, director of planning and development. They were also on the Zoom. Those dates were October 29th, 2020, November 5th, 2020, and November 9th, 2020. Out of these meetings, as Mr. Ash noted, we heard and noted the concerns of residents, and they were incorporated into the project changes as well as the conditions that were applied to the project. Some of these project changes included removing a drive-through coffee shop in favor of an in-store only coffee shop, increases in setback to the adjacent neighborhood, and removing an entire floor from the southern leg adjacent to the neighborhood. The conditions outlined in the resolution 2022, which the council approved they are outlined relative to in resolution 2022, which the council approved. Those conditions included, as some were noted tonight, restricting all construction parking and access to and from the neighborhood, regular construction hours limited to a stop time of 7 p.m., dog waste station and signage located at building exits, no parking allowed on the east side of Kingdale. The access from Kingdale to the courtyard shall be restricted to emergencies. Any light from exterior lighting shall remain within the property lines. All trees on the east curb of Kingdale shall be protected during construction, and the setback along Kingdale shall be landscape as depicted by in the landscape plan. So I will skip a portion, but I do want to mention in looking back at this, in 2001, the Land Clearance Redevelopment Authority granted a 10-year abatement to mansions on the plaza. In 2013, they did the same with the Vanguard Apartments. In 2015, they did the same for the second phase of mansions, and it was, in this case, a 5-year. Now, as the Plan Commission discussed, probably going back as early as 2020, the city has a policy in the comprehensive plan, and that provides guidance for abatement that all of us have to consider. And that guidance is it should not exceed 8 years. Yet 2 of the 3 most recent projects that had abatement did exceed that. So this has been a very long project, and I just want to conclude that after much discussion, deliberation, analysis, and really most importantly, the public input, I do believe this project is to the long-term benefit of University City. As one of our constituents wrote on Nextdoor just the other day, in the life of the city, a 5-year abatement really is a blip. It's been spoken about that the developer receives no money from the city. This is about a deferral of the increase once the project is completed. And that amounts to an almost five-fold increase of revenue in year 6 and beyond. Additionally, as it relates to the public comments, I appreciate all the public comments we got before and after, before and during this meeting. I read every single one of them. The comments in support of this project were 62. The comments against the project were nowhere near that. So I did want that to be on record. I appreciate all the comments from all of the citizens, and that concludes my remarks.
Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman Hales, for your walking us through the history of this project. When this project first came out, some of the residents that are in that neighborhood came right out, and it was basically asking us to stop the project from the get-go. They didn't want it, not all of them, but some. And I think that's important in the context as we're walking through this, because part of the argument now that we're hearing is they don't believe the developer needs this abatement to move forward with the project. The developer says the opposite. We're analyzing this as assistance to bring in almost $90 million of new construction in an area that we've looked at and said that's an area that could be developed and improved. And as we move forward, as Mr. Hales explained, there were lots of compromises that we reached with the residents because we were balancing the interests of a property owner, the developer who owns the properties there, with other property owners that live there. We understood that. We understood where these things and the conflicts could go, and we worked, I think, quite well to try to reach those kind of compromises. And as we get down to the nitty gritty of we're getting down to the last kind of pieces to the puzzle, and we're talking about the abatement. One might wonder if this is the last time some of the folks who didn't want this done at the get-go, when they say he doesn't need it, do they really believe that? Or are they hoping the developer does need this because this could be the thing that stops the project? I don't know. I can't get that far into it, but what I do know is if this were to stop the project, you don't have far to look in that area. You can look across the street. There was the old Lutheran Services building that's now a vacant lot. That's going to have a less, their assessment will go down because it's not a developed property. It's vacant. As one of our speakers told us earlier, we can't go back. The developers already started to do some abatement inside the buildings. They're not livable. If this project stopped and those became vacant lots, we would actually have an actual decrease in revenue. For how long? How long would those lots sit vacant? What would be built there instead? What we have here is as it was described, a very good project that in time is going to really boost the revenue during a period of time where we're going to maintain what we have. So I think it is in the best interest of the city to move forward in that regard and not to speculate on the possibility there's a risk that these properties could be vacant and we would actually lose money. That's not a risk I really want to take when we can help someone to develop this and move forward. Thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Klein.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank everyone who spoke today on this subject and all the residents that have reached out with written comments. I really, really appreciate, I think we all appreciate your comments and your input. And I try to listen as carefully as I can to these comments. I also appreciate the invitation of one resident to share my view of why I support this project. I think that that's part of transparency and part of communicating the reasoning behind why we're supporting, that we're not just going along with it. And I also want to emphasize that I am here to support the best interests of the community. And it's been a great experience working on this council because I really feel like everyone on this council is equally committed to the best interests of this community, and I appreciate that. So I want to read a few comments that I prepared to explain why I'm in favor of this project. I support this abatement first and foremost because I think this project will greatly benefit our city as a whole. Because we don't yet have a policy in place to determine what a reasonable abatement would be for this kind of project, we hired an independent consultant to advise us. Based on his assessment, we offered a 5-year abatement. And I believe this didn't favor the developer. I believe that this project is mutually beneficial. Some in the community believe that this abatement gives funding from our budget that we could use for other projects to the developer in order to offset his expenses. This is not the case. There is no fund that we are taking from to give to the developer that we could use on floodplain buyouts or city services. We are also not losing a tax revenue stream that we would otherwise have. Abatement only provides relief from future taxes on improvements to the property. Prior tax assessments to the property are still in place. We continue to get the same tax revenue stream during construction and abatement. In other words, nothing changes for the year of construction abatement period, but after 5 years, it is projected that we will receive up to five times the property tax revenue stream for that property. Some in the community have expressed a concern about the revenue stream to the school district and the library. Those are two that I've heard from. And my understanding, based on the figures that I was provided, is that right now from that property, the library gets $25,784 and the school district gets $326,364 right now from that property. During abatement, the library and the school district will get that same amount. After 5 years, the library will get $128,677 and the school district will get $1,590,000. So, based on these projections and the revenue stream that will come into our community after 5 years, I think that this is a huge boost for our city and for our city services. And not only will we benefit from the increased property taxes, but the higher density housing will need more state and federal dollars in the future, and an increase in sales taxes for more residents spending money in our city. Increased revenue means better services, improved schools, and more opportunities for development. The big benefits of this development for our city, the understanding that the costs have and then I just kind of want to add a little comment also on the chapter 100, because that's part of this as well. And I think that the big benefits of this development for our city, the understanding that costs have sharply increased since we started looking at this project over 2 years ago. And the fact that the developer, Mr. Deutsch, is a longtime part of our community with a history of successful development. Because of these factors, I also am supporting the chapter 100. So I thank you for your time and listening to my comments.
Mr. Clay.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Crow. I wanted to provide some additional context. I am supportive of this project and the abatement, and some of it has to do with the idea of development within University City. This council has been aggressive, as evidenced by the Costco development, in trying to build out a more businesses to support the tax base. Currently, University City is a residential community primarily and will remain so. But the reality is, as we have seen cost increase, my role on the council, and I believe the other council members, has been to try to keep that burden as much as possible away from individual residences. If we can get businesses to come into our community and share more of the tax burden, I think we are all served. The conundrum, now some have said that in University City, the population is declining, and that is correct. The conundrum associated with a declining population in an older community is whether a street has 10 people on it or 7 or 5, that street needs to be maintained to a certain standard. If the population is in fact declining, if you have 10 people ostensibly paying for that street, you have more revenue in which to maintain that street and the things associated with it. If you only have 5 people living on that street, you still must maintain that street, but you have less people contributing to the maintenance of that street. And so what we try to do is offset the reality of our population decline and subsequent revenue decline with development and businesses that will pay more. I have not been intimately involved in this process. It has not been in my ward, but certainly I am voting today on this abatement and this process. And so to that extent, I am involved, and as a representative, these things matter to me. But I think we do have to think about how we offset costs to residents, given costs are increasing and given our needs in this old and aging city. This is but one way to do it. It's not perfect. It is not perfect. But those who have watched this have heard me say this before. We cannot allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk, I believe we have a motion and a second. Am I correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Hearing no further comment, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on bill number 9486?
Councilmember Clay,
Aye.
Councilmember Klein,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Councilmember Hales,
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson,
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. The bill has passed. We'll now move forward to new business. You have before you resolution 2022-10 annual property tax rates. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. McMahon, seconded by Mr. Hales. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. You have before you resolution 2022-11 declaring certain declaring certain property tax revenues to be surplus. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. McMahon. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Klein. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Are there any council reports from members of council? Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to I'll be real brief. The study session we're going to have regarding the basketball courts, there's a presentation at the last Parks Commission meeting regarding that. And it was just an exciting proposal that was brought forth by some folks that have strong U-City ties that I think the community will be excited about. I don't want to say too much because their presentation will be here soon, probably in a study session. But it's an exciting proposition to help kids and folks that use our recreation facilities, and it could be really beneficial. So I just wanted to let you all know that that's coming down the road.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Hales.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Tomorrow is another Plan Commission meeting. They're just as long as ours is tonight. It'll be 6:30, and the links will be provided on the city calendar, or are provided.
Mr. Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Just wanted to remind folks that our library is, as you can probably see, is undergoing some significant renovation. It has been relocated to 6900 Delmar. So you can still check out books, take advantage of many of the services that you have become accustomed to. At 6900 Delmar, you can see the parking lot and other features of the main library, if you will, under construction. So just wanted to remind folks, 6900 Delmar, U-City Library.
Mr. Smotherson.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Very quickly, I just wanted to congratulate and thank the Arts and Letters Commission on another great concert outdoor season. which ended this past Sunday, and looking forward to the new season in June of next year. Thank you.
Anyone else? Now, moving into council comments. Anyone with council comments? The only thing I would like to say is I did have the chance to do the farmer's market this past Saturday with the petting zoo and seeing all the businesses there. So it really was kind of a fun weekend to be in University City. And as council member Smotherson talked about, the concerts in the park as well on Sunday. I think many people probably know that the Costco is scheduled to have its grand opening on October the 25th, and they have tents all over the St. Louis area for members. I think you also are seeing dirt moving at Olive and North and South for Mr. Smotherson and Mr. Hale's pit stop for the quick trip that is there. And I also want to congratulate Nobu's. They have relocated to the Loop, a beautiful location, and I hope that everyone will get a chance to go there soon. And of course, tonight was part of, again, more dirt being moved at Delmar and 170 on both sides. So there is a great deal going on in our community. Also, I believe next weekend we have the U City in Bloom Art Fair, art tour as well. So with that, I would welcome a motion to go into closed session according to Missouri Revised Statute 610.021, legal actions, causes of actions of litigation involving a public governmental body and any confidential or privileged communications between that governmental body or its representatives or attorneys. Is there such a motion? Motion made by Mr. Hales. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Klein,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hales, Councilmember Smotherson, Councilmember Clay, Mayor Crowe.
Aye. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening, Council. We will move immediately